So far in our discussion, take a moment to reflect. Do you think the relationship between Great Britain and the colonies was fair or unfair? So I'll tell you, a lot of colonists were perfectly fine with Britain creating laws for them to follow. Okay, as long as they had their certain economic freedoms and they had their religious freedoms. Okay, other colonists, they're kind of upset with British control over the colonies. Okay, they're upset that they can't elect their own officials, they can't vote for or against all of their laws, and they're going to be upset that they're only allowed to trade goods to other British-controlled territories. Okay? So Great Britain is going to desire to stay powerful in Europe and the rest of the world. Like we were saying, that's the whole reason why it claims colonies in the first place, and it has a strong desire to maintain control over colonies throughout the world, not only in North America, but North America especially, because at this point in history, that's where Britain was making a lot of its money from, the 13 colonies in North America. So where do you think Britain is going to want to expand next? Looking at the map of North America here. It owns its 13 colonies, but it's looking to expand and take control of more territory in North America. It's actually going to claim that it owns a lot of the land in modern-day Western Pennsylvania and Ohio. France is going to claim that that land is theirs. So the two get into this fight over the land west of the Appalachian Mountains. It's currently parts of Western Pennsylvania and Ohio. The colonists are going to be in support of Great Britain in this conflict, okay, because they know if France takes over the land in that area, and if France wins a war between Britain and France, that France might take away their religious freedom, okay? They might make them believe in the Catholic religion because France was a Catholic nation during this time. Okay, so some of the colonists, especially in the New England region and the Mid-Atlantic region, who moved into those areas for religious reasons, they don't want Britain to lose a war with France and to potentially have their right to religious freedom be taken away by France. And a majority of the Native Americans are going to support the French in the area. Okay, there are going to be some Native Americans that support Britain, but a majority of the Native Americans are going to have a better relationship with the Frenchmen over North America. Okay, and this is going to lead to a conflict called the French and Indian War. The reason why it's called the French and Indian War by Britain and the colonists is because that's who they were fighting against. They were fighting against France and their Native American allies. Okay, so it's Britain and the colonies versus French and the Native Americans. So after the war, Britain's going to win, but they're going to spend a lot of money on this war. Okay, they're going to win the territory that they were fighting France for west of the Appalachian Mountain Range, but they're going to spend a lot of money fighting against France and the Native Americans in this war. Okay, wars are costly not only in terms of lives, but also in terms of weapons and paying the soldiers. Okay, so for instance, soldiers aren't going to work for free for Britain. Those British soldiers, they're not going to pay for their own uniforms. They're not going to pay for their own guns. They're not going to pay for their own ammunition. They're not going to pay for their own boots that they wear. Okay, that all comes from British government funds. So Britain accrues a big debt as a result of this war. Okay, and Britain's going to decide to have the colonists help pay for the war. Okay, so what they decide to do, they decide to tax the colonists. So they're also going to leave soldiers behind after the war is over to protect the colonists from the aggressive Frenchmen and Native Americans who are unhappy that they lost the war. So the British government fears that those Native Americans and the French may attack the colonies again. So Britain takes the precaution of leaving British soldiers behind. And those British soldiers that are left behind after the war, they're not going to work for free. So once again, the British government has to not only pay for the cost of the war that just happened, but they also need to pay for the maintenance of the soldiers that they leave behind after the French and Indian War is over. Okay? So many colonists are not going to be in support of the war to begin with. Okay, so they're really angry when Britain begins taxing them to pay for the cost of the war. They felt that, a lot of them felt that the British government was just being greedy and just wanted to take lands from France. And they definitely didn't want the British soldiers to stay and after the war was over and to have to pay for them. A lot of colonists felt like they could defend themselves in the event of an attack by France or the Native Americans. So taxes, Great Britain's going to impose taxes, which means put into place taxes to collect money from the colonies. So taxes are money collected to support the government, okay, and what the government wants to do. So what does the British government need these taxes for? What are they using them for? Well, they're using them to pay for the cost of the French and Indian War. That war was very expensive. And they're also using them for the maintenance of the British troops left behind in the colonies after the war was over. Another thing that a lot of colonists don't like, but it's a policy that gets passed after the French and Indian War, is the Proclamation of 1763. So a proclamation is a royal order, okay? So this order was an executive order by the British king of the time, and it stated that the colonists were not allowed to settle or explore the new land won from France as a result of winning the French and Indian War, which that land was west of the Appalachian Mountains. So the colonists are not going to be able to explore that land west of the Appalachian Mountains that they won from France, even though a lot of colonists helped Britain win that war. So a lot of colonists are going to be upset about that. They felt that since they helped Britain win that land from France, that they should have the right to settle in it and explore the new land. But the King of England created a policy, the Proclamation of 1763, that made it illegal for colonists to explore or visit or settle in that land. Okay. So Native American tribes are angry about losing the war, and it's dangerous out there west of the Appalachian Mountains. So that's how the king justifies doing this. That's his reason for not letting the colonists settle in these lands. So here you see the proclamation line right there. So that's right where the Appalachian Mountains are. Okay, and they're not allowed west of that line per the proclamation of 1763. So now we're going to talk about some specific areas of colonial dissatisfaction. Okay, so we have the